All right. Hello, everyone. We are recording this Zoomcast, and the title of the Zoomcast is Out of Atlantis. And it is September 18th, 2016. So what I'm going to be doing first is playing the insert that I've made of my actual talk. And that is rather lengthy. It's about an hour and a half. I'm hoping that it will keep you engaged, however. And when that is over, then we will do a shorter discussion of the whole thing. So that's the plan, and here we go. Let me bring up the insert. Here we go, folks. Now, of course, if you're not hearing this, somebody needs to verbally speak up and tell me. When I mean that, I mean you're really not hearing it. Tricia, I'm going to let you be the spokesperson, because if you can't hear it, that means that nobody can, you know, if it's a thing that's going to be for everyone. So let's do it that way. Okay, here we go. Let us begin by looking at the world of Atlantis. This was revealed to me by the ultra sources that worked with me in my very younger years, previous to Thoth. So this would have been pre-1977. There was a world that they called Atlantis, the ultras that communicated with me, but they made it clear, obviously, that wasn't the name of it. But they used that term so I could understand the connections and refer to those connections more easily. This world that they were calling Atlantis was one of the worlds of Rigel, the blue star sun in Orion. As you know, if you followed my work, that Rigel in Orion is the original home, shall we say, of this Earth. And this Earth and Venus energetically were brought into this solar system. They didn't originate here. We're not talking about the matter, you know, the rocks and soil. We're talking about the whole planetary genius of the planet that each planet has. So these worlds, Earth and Venus, are from the blue star Rigel. And so is the world of Atlantis. But the world of Atlantis destroyed itself through its own problems, and I was never brought into the discussion or understanding about what those problems were, but obviously they were rather intense. I was simply told, as I recall, because I can't even find any written material on it at the moment, but I know it is written somewhere, that the Atlantean world, the persons, the people on the Atlantean world, they fell out of sync with their inscription of light, and obviously something really awful happened, and the planet actually exploded, I guess, or imploded. It certainly fell apart, really, literally fell apart, like this picture here. So they told me this because they wanted me to know that the Earth, the creation of Earth, the transportation of it as a planetary genius energy into the solar system came from the actual incident, if we can call it that, of the destruction of Atlantis. So I'm going to try to piece this together now, because I've never really asked exactly how that worked, because what they told me at the time was that simply the souls of Atlantis, because of the planetary destruction of the world of Atlantis, the worlds of the blue star Rigel chose to create an outlet for a new development of consciousness that would feed back into their system. And they developed it sorry, everyone. I forgot to switch the screens over. Oh my goodness. So that's my problem, dears. I forgot to switch the screens over. There's so much to remember.
It gave Samantha and Kailas a chance to come in.
Yes. Were you actually hearing it?
We heard it. Yeah. We just couldn't see it. That's why I wrote to you.
It's only a picture,
is there a video?
I'm sorry. I'm going to start that over. Not the whole thing, but I mean, I have to do the share thing. Okay, let me find the share button, and let's see why I can't find it. We have a share somewhere. Here it is. Share screen. Okay, I've got it. Okay, I'm sharing the screen, and there we are. Now, you guys ought to be able to see it. Okay, no, it hits. All right, I apologize for that, and for my video viewers, I'm sorry we had to do this, but we're going to continue now, and here we go. What we're calling here, X marks the spot in this solar system here, Earth. Why did they choose here? Why did they choose this solar system? Why did they choose this galaxy? I mean, we're not even in the same, are we in the same, we're not in the same solar system for sure. I don't think we're in the same galaxy either. No, we're in the Milky Way, that's right. Sorry about that, folks. Anyway, so why did they choose this? You know, I never asked. I want to find out. So I'm going to just take a few moments and see what comes through. Well, I'm receiving that the Milky Way and where we are here in the Milky Way has a certain, they're calling it an energetic alignment to Orion, to Rigel. Orion's a big place. Let's say, you know, the star sun Rigel in that area of Orion. And it is really what I'm receiving, a much broader topic than I was planning to discuss in this particular Zoomcast. So they're kind of, you know, just saying, let's wait on that, the Thoth is. But what he is giving me is that it was necessary to create in another dimension this energy place to bring about a recapitulation of the divine spark energies that the planet Atlantis held within that whole system. See, the planet of Atlantis held a particular, let's say, a gem star, let's call it that. And that gem star was like a capstone for the entire world systems of Rigel. So the capstone exploded. Now, isn't that interesting, or imploded? Because Thoth has told me many times that the capstone on the Pyramid of Giza exploded. This is an interesting thought that there might be a parallel there. But anyway, they needed to bring back that capstone in time, space, consciousness, whatever. So I'm probably skipping a lot of the story because most of it obviously I don't know, and they're telling me, oh, it's too long a story to go into here. But let us say that's the reason they did this. And they brought about the lotus reality in this point that we call Earth on another level of dimensional experience. And in the lotus realm, they were intending simply to nourish and build these energies and then take them back into the new Earth star. However, the Atlantean souls who came into the picture, and remember, it wasn't the Atlantean souls alone that created the reality of the Earth here. It was all the souls of the worlds of Rigel, or at least, you know, the whole presentation of their being wished this to happen. But the Atlantean souls were among them. Obviously, they weren't on Atlantis anymore because that wasn't there. So the one, wherever they were in you know, in the afterlife or whatever, they chose to be a part of it as well. Obviously, they needed to be a part of it. Their karmic resolution was at hand. So this is how it happened. And there's a lot to it. I can just feel it and see it. I want to start going off in different directions on it, but I'm being very stern with myself not to do that because it's a time thing. So I'll just say that once they were there, what happened was that the Atlantean souls wanted to go deeper. They wanted to create a deeper level of I don't know exactly how to call this. It's very difficult to put into words. But they were just hell-bent on getting down to the physical realm of Earth. They didn't want to stay in the lotus. They wanted to get more physical. And so they did. And they moved down, down, down the ladder. And the further down they moved, the whole thing shifted. And the more the lotus, all of it started moving down. And so it did. And we go through the epochs of, Lemuria, because Mu was the first point that it accessed on the planet. And it was the major point because that's where the royal point of the planet is. And it's like the navel of the Earth, I guess you'd call it. And that's where they had come down. So this whole Lemuria thing got it started, and finally the lotus was left behind. And everything was down on the ground, so to speak, speaking metaphorically. But then these souls that were restless wanted to seek new territory. And they especially did when Mu started getting kind of disrupted. And so they went out and formed this Atlantean continent. They formed a nation there. First, it wasn't a nation. They went through various stages. We're speaking about huge amounts of time here. But they became the nation of Atlantis. And Mu was still, alive then. But finally, Mu went into the sea, and there was just Atlantis. And there was that period of time as well. When I say just Atlantis, I'm making a little correction here. I don't mean, there were souls of Mu going all over the earth, but I'm speaking about the specific pathway from Lemuria, Mu, through to Atlantis. So that's what I'm focusing on. And we also have the thing with the falling of the temples of Melchizedek that I'll get to later. I probably should have inserted it earlier because that is what prompted people to leave Mu more than anything else and go to Atlantis, where it happened again, as I say later in the video. Now the Atlanteans, let's go a little further here. Wait, let's see, before I leave the world, I want to see if there's anything else that comes through. Yes, the fact that Venus, you see, Earth came through as the place to germinate and to get things back in order and to restore the capstone of the worlds of Rigel. Venus came as the guardian planet, the one to help balance, the one to aid it in this dimensional reality, and to bring higher souls like Lord Melchizedek through. They went through the portal of Venus from the Rigelian worlds through the portal of Venus to Earth. So Venus acted as that station of consciousness, and it's still with us, of course. And remember, what we see is Venus now, the bubbling in the, inhabitable world. That's just on the dimension that we're viewing it. It's not on the dimension of its center point. The center point dimension would have a thriving physical world there with human-like beings and air and planets and trees and flowers and the whole thing. Might look a little different, but not a whole lot, actually. It's what George Adamski saw when they flew him up to Venus. And everybody makes fun of poor old George now, because that was back in the 50s, and they say, well, they couldn't have gone there because we know what Venus looks like now, and it certainly didn't look like what George said it did. But George was going to the true center point of the planet dimension and not to what we're seeing, because it's our center point that we're viewing it through. I want to side a little bit there, but I just wanted to clarify for those of you who are wondering, how could Venus be a guardian to Earth when it's just a lump of gas? So that's what they wanted me to bring forward there, why Venus was here with Earth. I am going to also mention that through the portal of Venus, of course, the Lord Melchizedek, as they call him, and I'm sure that's not his real name, but they want to, again, make a reference to the fact that he is the original Melchizedek, which comes through the Hebraic Bible as the priest of Melchizedek and all of this, that the original of that energetic lineage, you might say, was this being that came to Earth to move through the portal of Venus that they're calling the Lord Melchizedek. And he is the one that established the heaven houses in Lemuria, which attuned to the zodiacal signs that we live in, or lived in then, which are pretty much similar to those that we have now. They were just placed differently in the sky. And this was an important part of helping the Earth to get back to where it needed to be, especially since it has left the lotus reality. We could go in chapters and chapters into that, so we won't, but it's an important part of this, because when Melchizedek came and established this and then left it intact with, the priestesses and the priests of the heaven houses and all of this going on, and then the priests, or many of the priests, overtook the order and killed most of the priestesses, ran them out, and that was the end of that in Mu. But then it was reestablished on the continent of Atlantis, and the same thing happened again. Maybe not exactly identically, but pretty close. It was just like a complete recapitulation of that whole destructive situation where the priests overtook the priestesses and toppled the temple. Now, some of the priestesses in both instances were in on it, and many of the priests were not in on it. They helped the priestesses escape and stuff. So, you don't want to categorize too strongly there. But in essence, the males wanted power over the temple, and the temple was under the province of the females in regard to the oracleizing of the energies that were coming through. And the males were just disseminated, but they didn't want to stay in that boat in both instances. It was that powerful, the desire for this aspect of fallen male energy to take over the female throne, so to speak. So that's an important part of all of this Atlantean thing, because what we're trying to show here is how Atlantis is the fulcrum of the main changes that went on this planet from the very beginning, the reason it was created in the very beginning, what we're calling Atlantis, the souls involved in that. Now, let's be clear. Many souls have been incarnated in Atlantis. They aren't necessarily the souls that were on the world of Atlantis. Whoops, excuse me, that was somebody that, it's a little pussycat. Sorry about that. Made me jump. Sorry. Anyway, they weren't necessarily on the world of Atlantis. They weren't necessarily the souls that took all these actions. There's only, as metaphorically speaking, a handful of souls from the world of Atlantis that caused those destructions there, and then necessitated the creating of the earth here, and that were the leading ones that wanted to go down and create the physical world here, and were the leading ones that wanted to go and explore and take people into another region of the earth, and that's where the continent of Atlantis was established, and that were the ones that tried to rule it in an uneven and imbalanced way. There were many other souls that have experienced the world of Atlantis, that have experienced the earth, the Atlantean continent, that are not what I would call, in this context, Atlantean souls. It's using that terminology so you can trace back. There's Atlantean souls. And the Atlantean souls are not bad guys. Well, some of them are. I have to say that. But many of them are not. But they got caught up in this whole thing, and they were swept along, and they did their due in it as well. Other souls have very wonderful memories of Atlantis. I certainly have beautiful memories of being in Atlantis. And, Thoth was, let's see, well, he was born in Tibet, but he, relocated to Atlantis for a long period of time before he went into Egypt. And Atlantis was a beautiful place, and a lot of enlightened, beautiful people were there, and wonderful things happened there. But these Atlantean souls were the ones that kept taking it closer and closer to the edge of peril, as they had before. So I think we can leave the picture here of the destructive Atlantis world and continue with another part of understanding this whole picture. Now on Spirit Mythos, I'm going to read you just a little bit here on the epochs of Atlantis. According to my Akashic insights, the history of the continent of Atlantis spanned thousands of years. I would say many thousands, if maybe more than that. Could have even been a million. Now that I'm, looking at it from a wider angle. But let's keep it in the thousands for this. I have roughly divided it into the following epochs. The first epoch, a very organic period in which the inhabitants of Atlantis merged their being with the planet and its heartbeat. The material forms they created in this environment flowed within the patterns of the most natural style and rhythms of the earth. Now, this would have been when they first ventured out to another world scene from Lemuria, which I really ought to say Mu. There's a problem with using the word Lemuria, which I won't go into here, so I'm going to try to keep to Mu. So when they went from Mu to the continent of Atlantis, that area, they were still, whoever went there, the souls were very light engendered, and they were still very much close to that whole lotus feeling at that time. So this is a very organic period. Then we go to Middle Epoch 1, a time of interstellar communion with beings of other worlds. While Lemuria chose not to participate quite so actively in the technological advances as a result of this exchange, for the most part, Atlantis embraced it wholeheartedly. Now, this period of time, we have beings that were coming and going in the world from other worlds that were, dropping by to see what was what, and some of them were very enlightened, and others were more, had their own agendas, and I'll trade you this if you'll trade me that, which is exactly what's going on now. We have those Atlantean souls out there still bartering and trading with ETs on this planet in our name without our permission. So this was kind of going on then too, although it wasn't in secret, and with the Atlanteans. Middle Epoch 2. While technology was still in full force, there was an increasing number of Atlanteans who began to reject much of the advances of science. They saw that the natural spiritual being of the people was rapidly decreasing as a result. Groups began to form from among both the science community and the spiritual, coming together to work for a transition into a less mechanical world. It was not their intent to throw out all technology, but to simply bring it into balance with spirit. There was resistance to this movement by the large majority of those in power at the time. The people in general ranged from indifferent to concerned, but took no real action to support either side. Isn't that amazing? when you listen to that, what are you hearing? You're hearing what's going on now, except now we're on the brink of making the change. We're not so indifferent. A lot of people are changing and becoming more aware. That's happening right now. But just a year ago, you could have read this and said, that's exactly what it is now. Okay, late epoch. Severe cataclysms brought on by a combination of occurrences, including the breaking up of one of the Earth's two moons and a war of huge proportions shaking the world, submerging Mu, and breaking Atlantis into a much smaller mainland with surrounding islands. Knowing in advance that this world would take place, the Atlanteans sequestered themselves and their technology in the tunnels and caverns of Atlantis. They survived. However, they are seriously depleted in their resources to rebuild. Slowly, a lesser form of technology emerges and a greater emphasis on spirituality comes forth from the ashes. The people are now awakened to the importance of keeping their lives in balance. The scientists become concerned by degeneration of the human DNA. Natural abilities are rapidly deteriorating in the human being. They fear the eradication of the species. A large number of the old school scientists gathered together on a cluster of new islands, now part of the Atlantean chain of Bimini. They create a vast complex there for the purpose of altering the time continuum to correct genetic de-evolution. This complex is named Ahura. I think I said that right, Ahura. The rest of the Atlantis is wary of Ahura and their secret project. This complex and its islands are considered outcast from the rest of Atlantis as a result. The Isle of Ruta, on the other hand, once a part of a larger continental Atlantean province by that name, becomes the Atlantean Holy Isle of the people. Latter days, more cataclysms batter the earth, tearing the remaining largest portion of Atlantis into sections. Using the tunnels once again, the people return to a changed landscape. They look only to essentials, rebuilding their temples and using sparingly their remaining technology. Ahura manages to survive and continues its efforts to save humanity. Ruta becomes even more shrouded in the Avalon haze, almost invisible to the rest of Atlantis and the world. The final spasm that takes place through a time tsunami, accidentally created on Ahura by their attempts to manipulate time at a microscopic level. The time crystal employed in this pursuit shatters, creating an involution of time waves upon the Earth. Since this event was not an act of nature, there was no warning. However, many Atlanteans nevertheless knew the end was coming as a matter of common sense, and also being attuned to the prophetic direction in which Atlantis was heading toward its own demise. As a result, there had been large evacuations from the remaining Atlantean islands, both into the caverns and across the seas. There were more people actually leaving Atlantis this time than simply waiting out the storm within the movement of the Earth. Ahura was no more, basically blowing itself into the time void. Ruta remained. Those who stayed on Ruta knew full well the fate of Atlantis would soon to come. They were dedicated to holding the sacred power in that place as an acunode for the Earth. When the time tsunami hit, it was Ruta that ascended intact into another dimension. Now, much has been left out here. I'm just touching on the highlights. We're talking about thousands and thousands, if not maybe close to 1 million years that happened here. So, this is only bits and pieces. One bit of all of this that we could go to, just a moment. So one thing I wanted to just share with you having to do with Atlantis. Are the Hyperboreans. Now again, this is a name Thoth gave me to talk about these beings. And, the word Hyperborea has been around a lot. I believe it originated maybe with the Greeks, I'm not sure, about this land way far north, and this mysterious, beautiful place. Well, folk concurs that there was such a place, and the Hyperboreans were largely Syrian. They'd mixed with some Earth races, but they had very strong Syrian genetics. And they mixed with some Earth races by the time Atlantis got to where the Hyperboreans actually migrated to Atlantis. Their position in that area was shaky because it was becoming more ice encapsulated and whatever, and so they moved to several different places. And one of the main places they went to was Atlantis. I'm not sure exactly which epoch this was, but it was while it was still a continent. So the Hyperboreans came to Atlantis, mixed with the Atlanteans, and then you have these Hyperborean Atlanteans coming out of that. So I think that's a really important part of all of this, because the Hyperborean energy was very prominent in the whole migrational levels that took place out of Atlantis at that time and what that represented. Before we go any further, we need to go back and take a look at Ruta. This, of course, is not really Ruta, but it's a nice picture that sort of has the feel of it in a way. So I go back to 1991. And this is material that comes out of my temple doors, or maybe it's source, temple doors. I haven't read it since I wrote it and worked with it. It begins with a quote from Solara. Solara's still around. I don't know her real name, but you might have read her material. So this is not mine. I'm quoting at this particular part from Solara. I'm quoting it back in 1991. The activation of Melchizedek. Solara of Starborn Unlimited, in Volume 3, Number 3, of the Starry Messenger, writes about the activation of Melchizedek. I'm especially interested in this revelation, I'm saying this here, as it once again ties in strongly with Melchizedek and what my work is doing, and is a strong focal point for this work. Amazingly, Solara also addresses the concept of the hidden masters, something I had not read in her material, only to receive this Melchizedek issue of Starry Messenger after my most recent translations on the subject. Now, Solara writes, this is a quote from her, "These powerful shifts are directly related to the activation of the Order of Melchizedek, which will officially take place on November 22nd, 1991. The activation will continue with heightened power through November 22nd, 1992, I guess. I have it 91 both times. See, I've never been right with numbers, but that's supposed to be 92. It is a necessary preparation for the opening of the door of the 1111. What we are undergoing is a deep initiation into previously veiled parts of our being. Melchizedek has long been the overseer of that which is hidden. His order includes the lords of wisdom and the holders of secret knowledge. The effect of the activation of Melchizedek shall be experienced by us in many different ways. We can expect to see the discovery of some of the hidden planetary hall of records. Most importantly, it will mark the emergence of the hidden masters. The new scepter which Melchizedek now wields is to quicken the bird star, transforming the many into the fully manifested one. This means that when we now look at the flock of small white birds flying in the formation of the one large bird star, we see only the one large bird star. On January 11th, 1992, we shall experience the third major activation, which is of Metatron. This, in turn, will triangulate with the activated energies termed Michael and Melchizedek, and thus create the doorway of the 1111. You remember that, the 1111. Okay, that's the end of her quotation. So I continue here. The figure on the opposite page which unfortunately I can't show you, is the Lord Melchizedek, an incorporation of all Melchizedek formology. The actual image stands 50 cubits tall, engraved in the pylon of Asherim at the temple of the northern door on the Atlantean holy isle of Ruta. This island is in our time frame, now resting under the Atlantic Ocean, but it also resides in an interdimensional state like Avalon, accessible through portals or windows between dimensions. Now, I will pause here to say, I say it ascended. Well, it did, but there were rocks and pebbles, shall we say, that went under too. You know, it was the separation of the cream from the milk, so to speak. That's what will happen when we ascend, incidentally, as well. This planet, I mean. The Lord Melchizedek image represents a multiple activation of the Melchizedek consciousness throughout all aspects of its realization. William Bueller, the major facilitator for the Shekinah Grove Matrix, drew this image using principles supplied him by Thoth through me, along with his own innate understanding of symbology. He did not realize that he was indeed recreating an actual ancient future image. So Bill, you know, he went to do what Thoth asked him to do here through me. You know, he was helping me out to do the drawing. And he actually, you know, the way it turned out was better even because he incorporated what I asked, but he created it in a way that is almost identical to what is really there on Ruta, this statue. With the insight of Thoth and Chariot of the Sun is Thoth's Merkaba, the beings, the 33 beings that assist him, I guess you could say. Let us examine the image further. William was correct in seeing the breastplate unfolded as an apron. His notation on this drawing is breastplate, 1/2 times 1 cubit, white linen folded, chur, white linen, white cleansing fire, serpent's hole, noble. So now Thoth says to me, the breastplate overlays the templates of the Imstra light molecule, the Metatronic fulcrum, the dynamic of the fearless flame, the double-crescented Rachel, which is also Rachel, the Antarian conversion, and several other cosmetrics that had not yet been revealed through to me. The object being held by the being is the star rose, the rose mystica, which William defines as the central lotus, also a correct identification. It is within the star rose that the Aaron rods of creation given unto Orion exist. And this is interesting. He asked me to spell it AARON/ARIAN. A respondent of the star rose is the wheel of fire, that is the representation of Thoth's Merkaba, the Chariot of the Sun, the Logos. While the star rose vibrates at an outward motion of 12, the fire wheel vibrates outward motion of 13. The latter is the hypercalibration of the former, and the lost harmonic of the 13th, accelerating the Earth mandala from its present continuum through the Metatronic spiral to be received by its etheric double, the Numinous Om, and thus becoming, in that alchemical process, the new Earth star. The Rose Mystica, then, is the sacred flower of enlightenment, awaiting resurrection through the empowerment of the fire wheel. I just have to pause here and say, way back in 1991, I see all the elements that I'm still working with were presented there. I couldn't even remember that, you know? I can't hold sequences enough in my brain to know when I wrote something like that. But anyway, there it is. So let us continue. The radiating essence, the elixir of transformation contained as a nectar within the star rose, is the harmonic of the 7 miracles of light. This streaming grace radiates from the constellation of Ursa Major. The 8th octave of the divine mantle is then received through the process of Isis quickening Osiris, Orion, in parentheses, to life. So here we have the Isis Osiris. We were invited, myself and those who were part of my group then, to enter the pavilion of the Star Rose, where the pylon of Lord Melchizedek stands at the entrance to the Temple of the Northern Door, part of the Sun Temple complex, on the Holy Isle of Ruta. The pylon is composed of the largest fragment of the Grail lapis meteor. That's a whole other subject, but you know, the stone that Lucifer brought to earth, metaphorically speaking. It resonates with the collective grace of the divine chalice, yet to receive its elixir, here we have our elixir mundi, one must walk the labyrinth of the Rose Mystica, unraveling her true nature and confronting the dweller on the threshold. The path is given in the Rose Mystica Foundation principle, and that would be TD 390. It's a sort of a, we won't go there right now, but anyway, to continue. Okay, so this is, I'm quoting here, well, I'm quoting from my 91 issue, but in that, I'm quoting from The Secret Tradition in Arthurian Legend by Gareth Knight. The seas of the, that's wrong, let me start again. Oh my goodness. Let me try it again. The secrets of the sea power are among the traditional lost secrets of Atlantis, pertaining not so much to the well-known Sun Temple priesthood of the sacred mountain as to the older center based upon the Isle of Ruta. This print has suddenly gotten much smaller in the part I'm reading. I'm going to put on those special glasses I sent off to order, and they're kind of strange, but I think they'll help me, so just one moment. Oh goodness, we'll give this a try. These little funky glasses that I ordered that you can like tune the lenses on each side. So I'm hoping I can do this. Okay, let's try it. In his role, Merlin, and remember Thoth was one of the 5 souls of Merlin, according to Thoth, brought the secret teaching of doomed Atlantis at the end of its phase to the new world of Europe and founded first try that again. Hibernian mysteries, the vestiges of which come down to us in the mythology of Ireland. Oh gosh, I feel a giggle fit coming on. But I look so silly sitting here with these crazy glasses on. Oh, okay. His mandate came from a great primordial being who is traditionally called Naranda. And I'm thinking that Naranda is very likely Lord Melchizedek, it was he who brought through to the consciousness of humanity as a guiding light the great solar pattern of a central life-generating point surrounded by 7 circles of force. That would be the 7 miracles of light, according to Thoth. This was the pattern of the great Sun Temple of Atlantis on the Isle of Ruta, and the spiritual pattern of civilization upon which the Atlantean human epoch was built. At the end of the Atlantean epoch, Merlin was charged to bring to the new root race a more subtle and complex form of the plan. This new pattern was that of the round table. With the round table, stellar forces and patterns are taken into account, for it is indeed a form of zodiac. This teaching emanates from a cosmic center of force that is concerned with the universal evolution of consciousness as opposed to comparatively localized solar or planetary evolution. For purposes of Earth consciousness, this source of influence may be thought of as emanating from what appear to us to be the 7 stars of the constellation of the Great Bear. We should also mention in passing a further pattern, also of stellar origin, but using as a transforming agent for reception by human consciousness on Earth the inner forces of the planet Venus. This formula mediated by Melchizedek is the formula of the rose cross. Well, this is just really quite incredible because I didn't know any of this until I read it, except for the Isle of Ruta. He doesn't mention it here. This is one of the few things, names, whatever, that I didn't receive on my own. I believe it comes originally from Edgar Cayce channeling about Atlantis, and I did not read those channelings. I think I skimmed one paragraph one time, so I don't know what he says actually, but I don't think he says anything about it ascending, but that doesn't, he just didn't happen to mention it, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, but all of the rest of this, I mean, yes, I knew the word Hibernian and all of this, but I didn't read how he puts it together here. And I already had put it together like this, in some of the main parts anyway. So, it's really neat. Even in those days, I was coming across things that were written in books and whatever that I didn't know anything about, and yet it did relate so completely to what I was writing at the time. I mention these things not to brag, honestly, but to say that this is how it happens. We're one collective whole. And this is not just happening with me. It's happening with other people as well, then as well as now. So I want to stress it when I see it because it's part of the adventure of life and the beauty of the fact that we're all linking together in these ways. It's really fabulous. Okay, so I'm going to put my little weird glasses back on because I can't stand to have them on any longer than possible. They're very weird into my eyes. It's like having two big magnifying glasses on your eyes, not like real glasses. Okay, okay, that's actually the end of that. I don't have to use the glasses. So let's see where we're going from here. So let's go to this whole race thing. And, I think it was Blavatsky that talked about the 4 root races. And then Steiner came along and said he didn't even want to call them races. He wanted to call them epochs. And now they're finding genetically that we really don't even have races, that we're so completely similar in our genetic makeup, even though, one person might look like an Aboriginal in Australia and another, pale Icelander up there in the frozen zones, and you'd say, how could these two people be so much alike? But they are. Genetically, they're practically the same. I mean, well, in the same racial type, they really are. There's just a tiny little difference that makes all the difference in the outer appearance. So, people nowadays are getting like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do with this? Are they racist? Are they not racist? What are they? And we're not getting into all that. That's really no consequence, actually. But I wanted to say that because, I'm going to use the word race because I can't find any other word to use right now. But that whole terminology is up for questioning. But let's talk about the fact that when people arrived on Earth and they actually were born into this world, and they originally came in sort of in a amorphous, one kind of race-looking person, and that look, I don't know how to categorize it. It's sort of a silvery, shiny thing. And they didn't have hair, and they didn't have, they had eyes, and it's sort of like, not the bug-eyed ETs, but sort of like they've been depicted in some of these pictures lately I've seen. These beings kind of like just, a form of a being and sort of large but beautiful, not buggy eyes, and just shiny like, well, that's what we really look like, kind of, there. And then we took on these outer forms. And at first we delved into one, and then we thought, okay, let's create a little bit of another one and another one. But why did we seem to feel the need to do that? Now, evolutionists will say, well, people in really hot climates are darker skinned, people in cold climates are lighter skinned. And it would seem to be that way because you have the Icelanders and the Aboriginals of Australia. Again, you have two different, climates, types, whatever. But I really think that is the tail wagging the dog. Because yes, that's true on one level of experience, but you see the whole thing with seasons. We have to go back to that. When we first started incarnating on this planet, away from the lotus down into this realm, in the lotus there were no seasons at all, period, none. There wasn't any. We get down to Earth, there really wasn't either at first, this world. There weren't any seasons because the Earth was not spinning on its axis like it is today. We're talking about a long time ago, folks, millions and millions of years ago. This was the early Mu time. So everybody looked the same because they lived in the same climate everywhere. And they didn't live everywhere. They lived in one place, in the navel of the Earth. And so because it was the balanced environment, whatever, they had a sort of a look. I don't know what it was exactly, kind of an Oriental look a little bit. Well, yes, I can show you. Hold on, I can show you. I have a picture that I did. Let me get that. Okay, here is an early Lemurian. Now, I did this in Poser, so obviously, you know, I mean, it looks kind of fakey, but you can get an idea. And I won't say they all looked exactly like her. This is a female. But, you know, that more or less, we're talking about an early, very early Lemurian, Merovingian, I guess I should say. And they pretty well all looked like this. However, Mu was around for a long time, and the seasons started picking up, and they started leaving that particular zone and going to other places like Atlantis and what is now, you know, North America and all over the place. And so that's when you had more races. What we call races is because people's looks, skin tones changed, facial features changed in regard to what they needed in the climate they were in, and also the electromagnetic energies of the Earth in different zones are different as well. So all of those determine the outer look of the individual more. Now I'm going to pause here and just say Casey and some of the others I think said that, you know, like they were all like created at once. The four, you know, the white, the black, the red, and the yellow. And those sort of disagrees with that. But, you know, it's a finer point because one way or the other, we all started from one root and spread out into these various crucibles of life. But as has been pointed out by our DNA specialist now, as I just said, we're really all one race. So this was the early Lemurian. I'm hell-bent on saying Lemurian, so I guess I'll just have to give up and say it. Then we go, okay, I just thought I'd go through a few here. This is what I did in Poser of Isis, the real Isis, not, you know, she had a name, not Isis. I can't remember it right now. But the one that was the actual Isis that the crystal skull dweller Isis came from, this person here. And, you know, she's no beauty to us. She doesn't look that attractive. And she probably looks better than she does in my Poser figure, but still, you know, that's not a features that we would really yearn to have. At least I wouldn't. So that's her. Then we go over here to Osiris. Now he looks better to me. Now I got his face a little scrunched. His head needs to be a little longer. Not a lot longer. He was actually a little bit stockier than the genotype at that time, which was long and thin. He was a little bit stockier. And yes, I painted his nails red because I saw him doing a ceremony and he had red fingernails, you know, painted red in the ceremony, so I kept it that way in my Poser. But more or less, this is how he looked, except he had blue black skin, and I could not get that in Poser. But it was a bluish tone, and it was all iridescent. I had like if you took blue black skin and you put some like fine shiny little bits of glitter, not a lot. I don't mean it was like a glitter baby or anything, but just a little bit. just a little bit to the skin. So they turned different positions. You kind of saw just a little bit of it there. That's what the skin looked like. So that's Osiris. Now this was Horus. And of course he was a blend of Isis and Osiris because he was their child. And that's his look, more or less. Now we come over here to Menon. Now Menon, this, I have to say this, the Syrians, we're going to get to this in a moment, so I don't know if I want to go into too completely, but the Syrians had a lot of different quote unquote races have. They're very mixed beings. I don't know how, what the story is about that, but they are. They have lion-headed ones, they have crystal people, they have, regular-looking people, what we would call, all of this. Oh, they have the blue-black-skinned people because Osiris was Syrian, basically. He came from the Blue Star, but he had the Syrian, he came through the portal of Syria. What do I want to say? The genetic Syrian, he had genetic Syrian in him. His soul was originally from Rigel. It gets complicated. Anyway, so they had the blue-black people. Syrian is just loaded with different racial types. This fellow, Menon, was part human, so to speak, I guess from the more, I don't know, we'll get to that in a moment, but human. And then he had a little bit of lion in him, feline, let's say, and from Sirius, the lion-headed ones. So he wore a mask, a gold mask, when he was out in front of the regular people because apparently he had, he looks human. Even, I know I made this mask in Poser, but even when I saw his face, it looked like a human being with a gold mask on. Whiskers weren't sticking out or anything. So it wasn't too different, but there must have been something about his face because of his feline energy in the DNA that freaks people out. So he usually wore a mask. And so that's him. Then we go over here. This is, I tried my best, folks, don't laugh, but this, I call it Sekhmet, but it's actually, I was trying to create a lion-headed being from Sirius. And it's not that far off. It is a little bit, I will admit, but they really pretty much look like this. And so that's, a pure Syrian, lion-headed one. So then, well, I just included her. She's one of my favorite poser works. She's a lion priestess. And I don't think she has a lion face or anything. They just used masks like that. But I just wanted to show her. Then we come to Shushmal. Oh my gosh, I cannot say her name. But she's the one incarnation that the actual soul that Thoth calls the 13th crystal skull, her true incarnation. Now remember the Lemurian priestess, who is also Mary Magdalene, also Nephilis, is sort of a surrogate for her. She's holding the energy for her in the earth in these different incarnations and in her crystal skull, but she's not her. This is the one incarnation that the real 13th crystal skull lady had on the earth. So I just wanted to show that one. And you can see there's a lot of different genetics here, obviously, a whole different format coming through. Okay, and this is, I can't say his name either, but he was a Missourian. Actually, he was one of the first Guanche. He was the Missouri when they got to the Canary Islands, and just a little bit later period than that. So he's not quite full Missouri, and he's not quite Guanche. He's like the in-between bridge race between the two. And so that's him. Now we're going to take a look at some of these other things. Now this is a redo someone did of an actual Guanche. And you can see his facial features are a little more squat. They're a little more, they're not elongated. See, the sign of the original, what we call race of the planet would be these long faces, because this came out of, if you whited him all out and made him just a little glowy body with no hair and just two big, beautiful eyes, you kind of get this format. You see this long face, okay? So we go over here, and this fellow doesn't have the long face, but this one does. You see how longish he is, the whole body and everything, and this is a statue of a Guanche king. Okay, now we get to Mary Magdalene. Now, I know you don't want to see her looking this way. You really don't. I didn't either. This is a poser that I worked with. And I did get her face a little too long, not too much. In fact, it was so much, I put the bangs on it. I put the bangs on it to make the face look a little less long because it was a little too long. But that said, if I do believe, this is my personal belief, that if you saw her for real and you looked at this picture, you'd say, oh, that looks like her. It's not her, but it looks like her. So I think this would get pretty close, that if you saw this picture, you could pick her out of a crowd, the real one, you know, that kind of closeness. And I know she's not beautiful to us, but she really kind of is. I mean, if you make her face just a little less long, and you had her in motion and moving around and everything, I think she would have her own very special beauty to her. The hair sucks, I'll admit that. Poser hair was very hard to deal with. That's a really odd hairdo. But, you know, if you made her have sort of a flowy, nice hairdo and everything, you could really make her a lot more beautiful. So I don't show this picture a lot because, you know, Mary Magdalene's go, oh my gosh, you know. But I really feel that she is attractive, was attractive, just in her own way. But I show her here because of the long face. Even though I got it a little too long, it was very long. And we have her cousin, Yeshua. Now here I have him with the beard. I was trying to find the portrait I did of him in poser without the beard, and then you can see just how long his face really is. But if you look at the Shroud of Turin, you will see the long face as well. Okay, we're back to her again. Okay, for a moment of levity, I was looking up, I want to go into this whole Aryan business. So I was trying to find a picture, I typed in Nordic male, came up with this. Not much to write home about, right? This is what Hitler wanted his people to turn into. Well, okay, let's skip the picture. We all know what they look like. So let's go to the term on Wikipedia. Okay, so we are at Wikipedia, and on Aryan is a term meaning noble, which was used as a self-designation by the Indo-Iranian people. The word was used by the Indic people of the Vedic period in India as an ethnic label for themselves, as well as to refer to the noble class and geographic location known as Aryavatara, where Indo-Aryan culture was based. The closely related Iranian people also used the term as an ethnic label for themselves in the Avesta scriptures, and the word forms the etymological source of the country Iran. It was believed in the 19th century that it was also a self-designation used by all Proto-Indo-Europeans, a theory that has now been abandoned. Scholars point out that even in ancient times, the idea of being an Aryan was religious, cultural, and linguistic, not racial. Drawing on misinterpreted references in the Rega Veda by Western scholars in the 19th century, the term Aryan was adopted as a racial category through the work of author somebody whose ideology of race was based on the idea of blonde Northern European Aryans who had, excuse me, sorry about that. I had to stop for a coughing spell, who had migrated across the world and founded all major civilizations before being degraded through racial mixture with local populations. Through Houston Stewart's Chamberlain, so-and-so's ideas later influenced the Nazi racial ideology, which also saw Aryan peoples as innately superior to other putative racial groups. And it goes on and on about Nazis and whatever. But so this is what they're saying now. Now I'm going to take you to what I asked just the other day to Thoth about this whole Aryan thing, because I had some ideas from certain things that had been said before, but I wanted more. So he speaks of them as the Jashur, and he says that first of all, this whole thing that they call Aryan is not a race, it is a race, and all of this, we had to just throw that out and say what was the type that brought in the original Nazi symbol, not Nazi, the Siegel field that the Nazis embraced, because they thought they were embracing Aryanism if they embraced that symbol of life and solar power. Well, the original, what we're going to call here Aryans, what they were trying to reach for, okay, were both called the Jashur. And the Jashur were a people that came out of the original Anunnaki race that they created, the first race that the Anunnakis created out of mixing actual star race genetics of the beings that were here at the time, that had come down through the lotus and everything, with other human factors, and with their DNA, the Anunnaki DNA. Now, the Anunnaki chose the light blondish persons because they were that. That was their type, and genetically there was something in it that sort of matched up better to theirs. Remember what they were looking for. They were looking for the Emstra molecule. Oh, well, they knew where it was, but they were looking to get it into their DNA. So they, even though all the beings on the planet, human beings on the planet, had the Emstra molecule, every single one, no one had it more than another, we all have it, they wanted something that matched up with them because they figured that it was a closer DNA match, okay? So that's where this first race came from. Now, once they got going, they said, well, let's try this, let's try that. They tried a lot of different races, so-called races and everything, trying to get this. But that was the first one. And because it was the first, when it became an actual race of people, and, they mixed a little with this and that and along the way to become the Jashur, they were highly regarded by the other people on the planet at the time. Because, you see, the Anunnaki, at that time, their legendary worth was that these were fabulous gods, This had been programmed into their whole mass consciousness, and it took quite a while for it to wear off. There were some that knew the truth of that, but, this was the picture. So, of course, the first race that the gods created, oh my gosh, they've got to be just these, fantastic beings, practically godlike themselves. So that's where this came from. That's a mindset that is still perpetuated today through this whole Nazi screaming, racial, white supremacy, all of this stuff, comes out of that original ball of wax of the first race of the Anunnaki. Wow, super beings. And this is inherently in the DNA that they worked in there because they wanted us to believe that. I mean, the Anunnaki wanted us to believe they were the good guys, the gods and everything. So it's in that. Of course, not everybody succumbs to that, but thank God. But it's, it's in that working. If people have bad childhoods and don't get hugged enough, I don't know what, they become racist because they're lining up with that whole picture, So we need to, this brings us into the next stage. Oh, before I go to the next stage, there is one more thing I'm just going to touch on here because it's a whole huge topic into itself, and that's the whole Grail King lineage. The Mazur were the lineage that I focus on the most here because Thoth is giving me the most information on it because it is the one that, uh-oh, did my earphones go out? See, I'm also laboring with a short-circuiting pair of a headset, and I'm hoping that it's taping correctly. I have another on order, but that will be many days from now that I get it. So let's try to finish this part up really quick. So the Mazur were the lineage that started out, was one of the 12 Grail families in Atlantis, migrated, to Canaries, became the Guanchi, and there went to the Bos, and all over the place, including India. Therefore, you get your Aryan sort of came out of there. But it sounds like they just were the one and only, but they weren't. There were 11 others, and they were very important families. But the Mazur, hosted the Davidic family that created Jesus, Yeshua. But again, it doesn't make them the mostest with the hostess, whatever. The other ones are equally important to the whole historical and spiritual referencing of this planet. I can only hold so much in my tiny little head, and they know that, so they don't give me a lot. But what they do give me is almost more than I can take as it is. So I haven't gone into all those other families. I've just followed the ones that relate to the particular work that I've been working in. But I just want to stress that we all contain, all of us on the planet, some of every single Grail family. I can't imagine that anybody, anywhere, doesn't have something of one part, of the Grail. We have different mixtures, but we all have all of it. So I wanted to say that before I moved on. I want to make sure that, oops, I'm sorry. You can probably hear all that clicking, but I'm trying to get my microphone to work. I think it is now. Let's hope so. And I'm not talking to myself here. So I have this horrific picture up here of this tsunami. Because I want to talk about the most important thing that Atlantis, the whole Atlantean out of Atlantis happened for us. And that is that the Atlantean souls created, and maybe with some help from some others that didn't know what they were doing, created the time tsunami. It's a whole subject matter unto itself. I don't want to get too much into that, but indeed, it did happen according to what I've received. And the time tsunami changed our timelines, did all kinds of things, even put Noah's Ark in a future, the Noah and his Ark of, oh my microphone's going out, I just know it before I'll finish this. And his Ark of genetic material wound up in a future time, closer to like 4,000 something BC rather than when it started out in 10,000 something. So it was quite a significant event. And this came out of the whole Atlantean situation, striving that began with the whole creation of this world. Now the Anunnaki, to go back a bit for a moment, came out of the same situation. According to what I received the other night, which was really a new eye-opener for me, the Anunnaki were, in their little world of Marduk or Marduk or whatever, actually were souls that had migrated from the world of Atlantis because it was blown up. They say migrated, they reincarnated or whatever into this other scenario. So they were there with us too. The difference is they had other genetic makeups that came in the between period, because we're talking about so much time passing here. But they're out of the same, we could call it a root race, I guess. And of course, they're looking for that Imster molecule because it's not that they don't have it, but it's so disturbed that it's really not there in that sense. They have to recreate it. There's some kind of they have an ability to receive it, but they don't have it. The molecule has been destroyed within them. So that when it's transferred, it can't work. Ours is sleepy, but theirs is, trashed. So it's a big difference. In any case, back to the tsunami. It was at Staffa in Scotland that was the zero zone for the tsunami, the time tsunami. And so that's why it looks like it does. Now, I know this is a geological formation, and you can find these in other places of the world. But in this instance here, this is what caused it. And I believe, but I have not completely researched this in the Akasha and with Thoth yet, that anywhere you find this formation prevalent, it's very, very prevalent on the surface of the Earth, it is connected to it in some way. Because, when we're dealing with quantum entanglement, I believe it's somehow connected. But this is the zone, for sure isn't anything for sure, that the time tsunami 0 point right here. Now I'm going to Temple Doors issue the last, let's see, which is it? It's the 397. And I have written a review, so to speak, a Akashic review on the book by Christopher Knight and Robert Lomas called The Hiram Key, Pharaohs, Freemasons, and the Discovery of the Secret Scrolls of Jesus. So I'm talking about how I believe this book is correct and how I believe it is not correct, in my perspective, to the Akashic perceptions that I've received. So I'm going through all of this, and I'm certainly not going to read it all here, but there are some pieces that I wanted to share with you. Thoth agrees that Hiram-Abif, he is the master builder of the Temple of Solomon, and he also was an incarnation of Thoth. Thoth agrees that Hiram-Abif was not a purely allegorical figure. However, he does state that the architect of Solomon's temple, whose Templaric name, that this could be identified with being a Masonic name, was Hiram-Abif, is the main figure in the allegorical presentation, and that he was indeed murdered by 3 men in a specific way. He also states that Senquiri, I've got to say this right, Sequenri, got it, Sequenri Tau II, and this is a pharaoh of Egypt that this author of the Hiram Key is saying that was the real Hiram-Abif. Okay, well, Thoth is saying they both are. There was a Hiram-Abif that was in King Solomon's temple, and there was a Hiram-Abif of Sequenri Tau II. I'm going to call him Tau, okay, was killed by 3 men in the same way as Hiram-Abif of the Solomon Temple. They were both killed exactly the same way. They were both initiated in the same mastership. This was due to the fact that they were both ritual killings. They were carried out by an order known as the Pharisee, not, the biblical with the PHs. This is F-H-A-R-I-C-S-C, F-H-R-A-I-S-E, Pharisee. This order had been installed several thousand years before by the Quirat Nephilim from the Assyrian lands. The Quirat were those Nephilim who imposed the genetic engineering upon mankind in the second Garden of Eden. Well, they're talking about the Anunnaki. They call them the Quirat, okay? I'm going to spell that K-Y-U-R-A-T, Kirat. I don't know. I tell you, these names, oh my gosh. But whatever they were, the K people. The Pharisee had been created to guardian the Nephilimic interests on earth in terms of what they considered to be their royal descendancy. Somewhat like in a political arena, the Nephilim wanted one of their people in charge in all key world positions. They were wise enough to realize that the systematic killing of anyone who stood in their way was not practical, mainly because it would create such a planetary karmic imbalance that the Solar Legion, who represented the Solarian races of the planet, would then be allowed to intervene through the mandate of the Violet Flame. Without the mandate of the Violet Flame, the dark forces could very likely overcome this universe. However, the Falal branch of the Nephilim understands well how the threads of cause and effect run in the world. They know where best to insert a disturbance in the flow of the planet's full light evolution that will siphon off some of the energy into the half-light spectrum of the Orotron, delaying the higher spiritual advancement of the world toward the full light spectrum. Thus, the Falal, through the K, their Pharisee, which is the Anunnaki, they're then ruling elite. The Pharisees, the Quarat was, the ruling elite of the Syrian lands, gave the command for the installation of the order of Pharisee. Through the eons, the Pharisee became increasingly separate from the original knowledge of their origins and purpose, yet they still managed to carry out its dictums to some degree. As with all movements, which are on an increasing spiral of separation from their source of creation, they eventually created a mystery play, incorporating the still remaining components of their original purpose. In their minds, this placed the power of mystery into a substitute role for the lost original knowledge. This is a situation that has resurfaced many times through the history of Earth. With the Pharisee, their mystery play was dark, for it is based on now obscured principles aligned to the fallen lords of light, or Falal. So this Towel fellow, this Egyptian, was of the Usamonji, the caretakers which the Shepherd King ancestors had installed as the temporary ruling power until their return centuries later. Okay, I have to backstory here. The Hyksos, who historically are represented as this barbarian tribe that took over Egypt and did horrible things to them, are the actual shepherd race. These are the descendants of the Lords of Light. These are the good guys. They weren't perfect by then, but they were pretty good. And they left Egypt for a period of time, and I've forgotten the reason. It's a whole story. I won't go into it. And they left as caretakers, these Usamonji people. And they said, when we come back, we want this place nice and clean, and we want our keys back. Well, when they got back, several centuries later, the Usamonji said, you're not coming back here. This is our place now. And there was a big battle, a lot of big battles. That's what happened. And the Usamonji actually won. And because, the other fellows that were not, they didn't have their superior powers by then. And so they won, and they changed all the documents and the records, everything, to say how bad these Hyksos guys were. The history is written by the victors, as someone once said. So anyway, back to the story. Therefore, he was initiated into certain mystery rites, which were those of the Shepherd Kings. So the Hyksos were over the Taos Egyptian, who was initiated into certain rites that were then in place, that the Usamonji, the usurpers, had created. Thus, those among them who wished to serve the original agreement with the Hyksos as Denteo were not seen in favor by the underground faction of the caretakers who wished to overthrow the Hyksos. Thus, this underground was composed largely of disaffected caretakers and greatly directed by the ever-present Pharisee, who, during the time of the caretakers' rule, had been an instrumental influence in the government of the land. The returned Shepherd Kings had not wished to simply take over all ruling agencies at once. They desired instead to allow certain caretakers to remain enthroned as the symbolic Moses under their oversight. Understand that the Shepherd Kings were not a perfectly illumined people. They had a high degree of spiritualized purpose and insight, but they were not the enlightened ones their ancestors had been. They came to reclaim what was theirs, that they had left in guardianship with the Usamonji caretakers. They were fair, but firm. The Shepherd Kings were just that, kings. a ruling class of people who were accustomed to being treated accordingly. They wished no bloodshed, and indeed none was necessary, for the caretakers knew of the shepherd king's unworldly powers, well, I guess they did have them, and did not wish to openly defy them. Subversive actions, however, were another thing. They were exceptionally great men and women among the Hyksos shepherd kings. Several of these persons were to become the ancestors of the Holy Family of Jesus. Yet, as a whole, the shepherd kings could perhaps have interacted with the native Egyptians, including the caretakers, in a little more sensitive manner. Instead, the Hyksos rulers were seen by many as all too real has-beens, whose contracts, notwithstanding, had given up their right to rule and of a nation in an increasingly changing world with their departure many centuries before. What a large percentage of the Egyptians, native Egyptians, did not have the historical foresight to envision was the reinfusion of culture, science, and history that the shepherd kings, for the most part, shared freely with all the people. This allowed them to reintegrate a lost aspect of their heritage back into the society as it was in the ancient days of their ancestors. In addition, the Hyksos saw to it that the poorest of the Egyptians were able to receive a primary education if they so chose. Aha! Here we go back to Bernie and his education for all, and it is really present in many other countries of the world now. Many of them did not, as a farmer saw no use in spending his time learning about the heavens or the history of the world. The Hyksos also subsidized farming and other useful occupations. They created medical centers that turned away no one. In other words, their good deeds were far outweighed their authoritarian demeanor. In their age, they did have a loyal mass following. In fact, from among the average Egyptian populace, over 60% either passively accepted the Hyksos or passionately embraced them. So Sinkari Teo was a good symbolic Moses. This made him an enemy of the subversives. But of greater significance, his loyalty to the Hyksos shepherd kings blocked a series of connections through his family lineage that were structured in such a way that were he too to be removed, could be opened to the Pharisee once again. The whole of this intrigue, too complex, as I even say then, but the point is of all of this, and I think I'm going to skip over a lot here, is that by ritually killing him, they placed it in a modality that the gods were on their side to the people that were already becoming somewhat, superstitious in that regard. That's a very shortcut. There's more to it than that, but I'm just going to say that because we're going to go on and on here. Oops, I forgot to turn my phone off. Just a moment. So, I'm going to have to turn this off. Hold on a second. Also, they were very superstitious. The ones that murdered him. I can't get all these names here. And so, in order to protect themselves against the curse of murdering one of who was initiated by the gods, they perceived that the right would protect them, but left a message loud and clear for the shepherd kings as to who had done the deed. Of course, it didn't protect them from anything, but it's all a part of a big, superstitious package, okay? So that if they killed him ritually, they were off the hook. So that's what they did. And this happened again, the same soul, which was Thoth's soul, when he was, it doesn't say that here, but that's what I'm receiving. Now, many times the Thoth soul has overlaid several others, like with Merlin, he was one of the 5 souls of Merlin. I suspect he was overlaid both the hieroglyph of Temple of Solomon and as this other Egyptian fellow here. I suspect he was overlaying them, but I don't know for sure. Anyway, he was part of that whole situation. And he, of course, knew he was going to be murdered. I would think an illumined being like that, there was a role to play here, and he played it. And we must remember that I was really shocked when I first started getting information about those personal life, so to speak, is Thoth Rasmus, that his first wife was murdered. I mean, so, you know, it wasn't all just sitting on clouds of light when Thoth was incarnated into this world. To continue reading, as Christopher Knight and Robert Loma's suggestion that Tao, the Egyptian Tao, was killed because he refused to relinquish the secrets of the Horus initiation, Thoth tells us that the Horus initiation was a level of the solar initiation of the Hyksos. The Shepherd Kings didn't become initiated in it because they already personified it. When the Hyksos Shepherd Kings returned to Egypt to repossess the throne from the caretakers, they were displeased to find that the caretakers had been using the Hora, or initiation of Horus, for their own power and glory. The Hyksos had left them the Hora as a means to stay attuned to the celestial command and thus guide the people wisely, using the powers they gleaned from the Hora for benevolent purposes. Instead, in gradual increments, the caretakers began to use the Hora for their own selfish ends. When the Shepherd Kings demanded that the Usumunji caretakers cease the practice of the Hora, with the exception of those who proved to the Hyksos that they use it wisely and justly, the caretakers largely rebelled and sought to destroy the Hyksos Shepherd Kings through conspiratorial means, which also led to the demise of Tao, the Egyptian Tao. Once the Hyksos were driven from Egypt, the Pharisee, along with the remaining caretakers, the Hyksos loyalists, were either murdered or banished. Redesigned history concerning the Egyptian kings. This redesigned history concerning the Shepherd Kings, the Shepherd Kings. Just as they did with Akhenaten, centuries later, the Pharisees saw to it that the texts on the Shepherd Kings were destroyed, and in some cases rewritten in a distorted manner. Akhenaten was a Shepherd King who came back. You know, I mean, he was the last of the Shepherd Kings. There was a much period of time in between. There were no Shepherd Kings, and then he came back in. And look what happened to him. So, but I felt that it was important to bring this up because this is at the crux of what's going on in our planet right now, at the very crux of it. One more little tidbit. Thoth reveals that the Templars received their Christian doctrine directly from what he calls the Order of Jerusalem, which was the inner order of the Nestorians. Thoth further declares that the Order of Jerusalem was founded in principle by the man he calls the first Templar, John Martinus, the son of Yeshua ben Joseph. Of course, it wasn't called Templar Order, but he's talking about the principles and more or less how it operated in its first stages, which actually came out of Atlantis. And John Martinus took that and created the first order. So we have that whole sequencing there, out of Atlantis again. One could not help but notice the similarity between the name Pharisee with an F and Pharisees with a P.
I'm going to cut it there. It's only a tiny little bit left, and I'm just going on and on. So I'm going to come back to you guys here. Let's see if I can go back. Here's the shared screen. Let me see why I can't find it. There it is. No, that's not it. Stop share. There we are. Okay. I know that was long. And let me tell you, ladies and gents, I talk too much. What can I say? I just talk too much. And I'm going to have to find a way to make it less. Talking about my glasses and all. I mean, you know, you listen to yourself. You're talking and you think you're just doing fine, and then you go back and listen to yourself, and it's like this. My only other alternative, if I can't break my bad habits, is to take it into and edit it. But that's a big job with longer things, and it's not going to be this long all the time. So I promise it won't be. But anyway, you can see that there was a lot there, and I was trying my best to share it with you best I could. And so now, without further ado, we're going to go into our discussion period. If you have any brain cells left after listening to all of that. And I would, let's see, I think everyone, has cameras. You can turn your cameras back on if you will. So if anyone has a question that doesn't wish to turn their camera back on, you can type it into the chat box and just say talk. And then I know that you want to talk. Otherwise, if I can see you, you just raise your finger up. Don't wave your hands because that messes up this. Just go like that. Okay, Bart's right on the go here. Let's hear it from Bart.
Yeah, I just wanted to reassure you that for me it's not too long. I don't know about the others, but I'm highly interested in everything you said and trying to bring it all together. It's not an easy task for you. So just to reassure you on the fact that I'm not too bothered by the length of your videos or anything like that. So
I started faster toward the end because I was trying to get it.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so I just said one thing. You trying to bring it all together. The Mazur Guanche were then the predecessor of the Hyksos, right?
Yes. Well, let's see. Wait a minute. No, hold it. I need to correct that because that's a good point, and I need to be careful with that. No, they would have not been. I'm sorry. Who would have been? That is directly. There might. This is the way I have to answer it. There's some of the energies, some of the genetics of the Grail would have probably, that family would have probably been mixed in at some point, but the major DNA trail would come directly from the Jashur people, the Aryans, that first race that was, or whatever, that was created by the Anunnaki, or they haven't.
Okay.
So some of the Grail would have gotten
the Jashur. Sorry, what's the difference between the Jashur and the Mazur Guanche? Is just a different strand, or?
Well, they're more directly just coming right out of that that Anunnaki genetically engineered family. The Grail family didn't have any genetic engineering in them. The original, when they're sitting there in Atlantis, they didn't have. They came right from the font. They came right from the star paths that came into the earth. And I might mention also, we're talking so much about Orion. Well, that's because that's the home of the planetary genius. We have many other beautifully enlightened star races that are mixed in now, of course, and were mixed in very early on in the scene. So the Grail families, as they were at the time of it, when they were in Atlantis, and by the time they got to the Canary Islands, were not genetically bothered, but by the time we get to the Egyptian period where the Hyksos were coming and going and all of that, the Hyksos were really more directly related to the engineered family of the Jashur. The Jashur were not, again, they were not bad guys. Yeah, they had some problems like we all do at that point in time, but they were, just because they were genetically engineered family, because they were the first family, the Anunnaki wanted them to really have a lot of star genetics, not just theirs. See, they wanted a lot of genetics from our star people. They didn't tap the Grail families because that's a whole other story, but they managed to get some star genetics from the true font of the earth, let's say, from the lotus font. And that was very prevalent in the Jashur family. That didn't make them superior to other Grail family, to the Grail families by any means, but it did give them a certain enlightenment, although they also had this right to rule thing. They were the kings, and they felt that way. So they were, they had their lesser side, but they were good people, basically. They wanted to do good things. They didn't want to spill blood, but they did. So that's the long story, I guess, Bart. It's really hard to explain these things when everybody's all mixing and going places and doing different things. But they were primarily Jashur, with a sprinkling, probably by that time, of some Grail blood in there.
Okay, so I wrote it down, and you said that the Hyksos then were the predecessors of the Davidic line of Yeshua?
No, the predecessors of the genetic line of Yeshua were the Mazur. However, by the time everybody got to Egypt in that period of time, you had the Mazur link directly mixing with the Hyksos. And that probably occurred before the Hyksos took off into the great unknown to do whatever it was they wanted to do, and then came back. The Mazur would have integrated into that whole Hyksos thing then, but not when they originally came in.
Right. And then the other 11 Grail families that you said you haven't been able to dug into.
I have. Well,
Is that something that you're planning to do, or is that something that you know a little bit about?
It would be interesting to at least tap that font a little with Thoth and say, okay, I can't, go through the whole story with each one, but I want to see what comes up. In fact, I think he did give me a little on them at one point, and I believe I was trying to find that. It wasn't a lot, but it was something, and I couldn't find it. I've written it down. It's just, I've got 50 years of text, and it's like, it's hard to find things. But if I'll go back, I'll work on that because it is important. So I'll see what I can get on it at some point here.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Oh, someone, yes, Kailasa.
Yeah. Hi, Maya.
Hello, sweetie.
And well, just like everybody else, don't worry about the length of your videos. I was actually loving your everything you said today.
Okay.
I have 2 questions. The first question is, when you were talking about the ritual killings and these pharaohs, Sequenre or something like that, you were reading from a Temple Doors issue. I'd like to know what number.
And Monica asked me, Tricia asked me that too, and I'm going to have to go back and look. I have it, but I don't want to interrupt this video to do it, so I will find it. I will send it to I'll post it on Osiris Arising, okay?
I thought you said 397.
You did, I did, okay. I trust Bart, he's really good at that. 397.
Okay. Okay, that's the first question. And the other question is that, well, according to other materials that I've read, the House of David was the tribe from which Yeshua came.
Yeah.
So does that mean that the Masuras were connected to the House of David?
Well, they, out of the Masuras came the House of David. See, the Masuras came first.
Okay, and so the tribe of Judah, is that also related to the Masuras?
I don't know if it is, yeah, it may be related to one of the other tribes. I can't give you a clear answer on that. I can certainly find out, and I will attempt to do so. But at this moment, I can't. They're obviously a Grail family, but I don't know if they're Missouri or they came out of something else. Again, the problem with all of this is we're simplifying it because we have to understand the path, but so many people started mixing that with so many people. It's this family with that and this strain with that. It's kind of hard to say that they were the Missouri. Maybe they were several tribes, same thing with the House of David. But the House of David one very definitely came out rather directly from the Missouri. That I know. And I'll try to find out about the Judah tribe because it is an important one.
Maya,
thing.
One more question. When Thoth rebuilt the pyramid at Giza,
Mm-hmm.
you wrote about that in the manuscript, the journey of the beloved.
Yes.
My question is, had the time tsunami already happened?
Yes. Let's see. Wait a minute. Let me think. Had the time tsunami? No, it hadn't. But it happened. It hadn't happened shortly afterward. Yes. But it didn't happen then. No.
Okay. So those are my questions. That's it.
Okay.
Maya, I think someone has a question in the chat.
Yeah, I mentioned that to you, both Samantha and Kathleen.
Okay, let me open that and see what we've got here. Okay. She says, it was wonderful. I love the depth. Where does the Anu fit into this timeline? Oh my gosh, Samantha, I don't even know what you're referring to. Anu, probably I'm just going brain dead by now, but can you give me a little pointer on what the Anu is?
Is that the Anunnaki?
Oh, Anunnaki. Oh, okay, it's just short. No. You can't talk. You can hit that little talk button if you need to talk. It's on mute right now. It's on the far left of the screen. There you go. So what were you referring to, Jen?
When I was looking up the companions of Horus, looking for more information, it came up with the Anu, and it was saying it sounds like the Anunnaki, but they're not the same tribe.
No, it's not. No, it's a word. In fact, as you can see, Thoth wasn't even calling the Anunnaki the Anunnaki. He had another name that I've forgotten now. It started with K. So no, that is I guess a name they translated somewhere along the line from the language of the Assyrians, but maybe they even got it wrong. Who knows? But no, it's not. On is light, and I don't know exactly what Anu would be, but anything that has the word on in it is talking about light. On and what's the other word? Or.
Ion.
There's or. I think the city of On. It's An or On. Both refer, like the city of On is often called the city of On, and I think in Hertog's book he uses On more, but it's the same thing,
I'm trying to think what it related to. It was saying that the Anu, though, was a tribe that comes slightly before, and it was related to the companions of Horus, and it was related to a tribe called Set. Oh.
And this is in my beloved book. Is it that in the Thoth of the Beloved? Where are you reading this?
I don't think so. I've been on different places, and I can't remember where I've seen that. I was going to post it. I'll post it on the group.
Like I said, my brain is just not big enough to hold everything I've written. Sometimes I wonder, now have I eaten lunch yet? Oh yeah. So I don't know, but if you do, I can piece it together.
Yes, please. Okay.
Now let's look at what Kathleen. I'm surrounded with family, so we'll ask my questions via chat. There was just one sentence about the earth being formed along with Venus to heal the tear guarded by the Telesakara. My question then is about when the tear occurred time-wise. My previous understanding is that it was due ultimately to the Atlantean time tsunami, but this info today indicates it was previous to that. Yes, it was previous to that, but what happened was I've never really been given why there was the original universal tear. I don't think I have, and that's a good question. But when the Atlantean tsunami occurred, it created the Kali Rift. Now the Kali Rift is ours. We rifted it. And so then the Kali Rift, of course, made our part, our connection, our holographic connection to the tear, the universal tear, even more problematic, you see. So the Kali Rift is ours, and then we have this universal tear in the whole universe. But we have to remember that we share it with our kindred, but it's a giant hologram that contains that whole picture. Whereas the Kali Rift is a tear of this world, this Earth hologram part of it. If that makes any sense. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yes. Fine. Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, Maya. I was wondering the whole Kali Rift thing that I've understood so far. Bill's group was involved together with you and under Toad's supervision in, let's say, repairing the Kali Rift or the universal tear, and they succeeded in that in 1994. Is that correct?
I remember that he asked for some information from Thoth on that for a project he was doing. I will tell you that the universal tear is not mended. I mean, that's a big do. I'm not invalidating the work that Bill has done, but I perhaps you should ask him again, because I think he would agree with me on that the Kali Rift is still there. There might have been some kind of good works done in that regard. You know, this is again a big topic, the Kali Rift is. You'd have to go to Bill and say, well, exactly what were you talking about there, and what, because it's just so big. So I would say the whole Kali Rift was not healed. No.
Okay, yeah, I don't want to misquote him on anything. I just, I think if I remember well, 1994, that was under the Shekinah Grove matrix that it was operating back then.
Yeah, yeah, and we did some work on that, but I've never received anything about the Kali Rift. If the Kali Rift were entirely mended, we would have a whole other timeline now. It would not look like Trump and Clinton. I tell you, it wouldn't look that way.
Yeah, the manipulations are still going on, right? I mean, it's still very much Pharisee and in whatever way you spell it, but it's still their game in many ways.
Yeah.
So
The Rana, yeah, okay. The Rana.
Rana.
Sandy, who knows my work really well, is talking. Yeah, the Rana timeline. Is that what it is, Sandy? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah.
Timeline.
So the Rana timeline is what we're on now. I can't remember. Is that correct, Sandy? She knows my work better than I do in some ways. Okay, yeah, that's what we're in now, and it it really sucks us, but we're working on it.
I think Pamela wants to say something.
Oh, yes, Pamela.
Hi, Maya, thank you. It was an incredible history lesson of our planet and a lot of information, and I have a whole bunch of notes.
Okay. Well, can I interrupt you for just 1 minute, Pamela? Just 1 minute. What Sandy's telling me is the Rana is where we're going back to. So we're trying to reconnect to the Rana, and that is not a timeline. It's a time wave. It's kind of different. But if we can get back to the Rana, then we can get to the more superior timelines and the frequencies that we need. And I remember that now, but I forgot the word. And if I'm following it the way I should be, Sandy, if I'm not, let me know. Anyway, I needed to make that. We are in a time warp. Yes, I know that. Yeah. And we need to get back to the Rana, which is a flowing stream, and then we can connect more succinctly with the timelines. We're connecting to them now, but it's wobbly. It's not in the right course. So that is what we need to be doing. Okay, thanks so much, Sandy. I really appreciate that. Back to you, Pam. Sorry to interrupt you. Please continue.
No, it's kind of some of what I wanted clarity, because there's so much. Because many of you have read your work. I'm almost jealous that you are so aware of all this, and it's hard for me to sometimes follow all the names and as I said, it's so much incredible information. I was also felt like I needed clarity. And your question was somewhat answered when you mentioned about the timeline, tsunami 0 point in Scotland, and that incredible picture that you showed with it almost looked like hematite or pyrite columns with this snow in Scotland.
The Isle of Staff off the coast of Iona.
Yeah. That was really striking to me. And I mean, I wish I could have get a little bit more information about that, because there seems to be such multiple layers of holographic rifts.
Well, when I put up this video in my WordPress, it's going to be on Tribelite. I will try to remember to put that link. I'm going to try to remember what links need to be placed, to referencing material beneath.
Oh, good. So we can read it. Go back and read.
Right. I'll do my best to do that. Right.
Great. Thank you, Maya.
So Maya, can you summarize today for us? Is that possible?
Well, maybe Sandra can. No, let's see. Okay, well, we start with the world of Atlantis and or what he's calling Atlantis, and how it came about that the important part of this is that I knew it before, but somehow it didn't stick in my brain until I started going through all this. Why was this Earth created? What is the purpose of it? Well, in the linear sense of experience, it's because the Orion, Rigel, the star sun in Orion, had this little incident, and that one particular world just went haywire, and whatever reason it self-destructed or did destruct, and it's upset the balance of these whole worlds and that are within Rigel. because higher worlds are within their suns and not orbiting around them. And in order to keep it that way, they needed to create another field of repairing this. The whole reason obviously has not been given to me, but they chose where we are now in this galaxy. And I think that's a very interesting topic. And I think the only reason they said was because it would be the whole Zoomcast would be like 3 hours long then. So I will find out about that and see what I can get for that. But anyway, for whatever reason, they chose X marks the spot here. And yet they weren't down on this level. They were on this lotus level. And then, the Atlanteans were in the mix, the Atlantean souls that blew themselves up. They said, wait a minute, we got to fix things too. So they came in, and then they decided they wanted to go deeper. Why? Another big question. But they went deeper and deeper, and finally they landed on the primal level. And that's where all of this world is. And they were already on this primal level. There were primal beings, creatures, and whatever, and they mixed a little here and there with them too. See, I didn't put this in the video, but you get the Neanderthals and all of this coming out of all that stuff. So actually, mostly, and then, oh, wait a minute, the Anunnaki, it was the Anunnaki that went so far as to create the species that became the Neanderthals and all of that. The Atlantean souls didn't do that, but they stirred the pot a lot. They brought in the human race into this whole equation. And so then these other things happened. The Anunnaki came in, also old world Atlanteans, and they, created the Neanderthals and all of this out of it. Finally, at first they were just trying to do, to get the immature molecule, but it was a hard job living on this planet, and they needed more manpower. So then they created the real slave type that were like, and they were like this, and they just did their job. And those beings became what we think are our ancestors, but they aren't really. Although we all have Neanderthal bloodlines and stuff. We all do by now. So that's how this all came to being, sort of.
Maya, I think there's a lot of good info in your koala paper on the Rana time wave, and there is a graphic there for people to see.
Yeah, right.
And there is also, I think, I have now, I can't share the picture, but I have it. It's the Emerald Mar in 1994 that Bill says that was a successful part of the repair operation through the Shekinah Grove matrix to reconnect with the Heliomar and Koala.
Yeah, that was done. I do believe that was done.
Yeah, and was it then? What is it? The Isle of Mana on Corbola. Is that then accessed through the Shekinah Grove matrix? Was that done for the first time?
Not the first time. Not if you're talking about all the people on the planet. I would say no. But the Corbola has been accessed by people in their dream time and whatever for various purposes. It's not a prevalent thing, but it has happened, I will attach information on this whole Corbola thing and the Templamar Emerald table, all of this. I'll try to remember this. Tricia, would you write this down for me real quick? Just write it down. That I need to Templamar, Corbola with a K, and
Koala maybe.
Koala. I can't really share
Corbola?
No, the other one, Koala, with everyone, because technically it's part of my portal. Anybody that goes into the temple of the Vault of Thoth in my portal, it's a portal member. It's right there. It says Koala, and you can get it. I can give a little short on it though. And then what was the other thing? There was one other thing. Pamela asked for something. What were you talking about, Pamela? See, I've already forgotten. Do you remember what you were asking? I said,
yes, I was talking about the Stafta in Scotland.
Yeah, the whole time, the time stamp. If you just put down time stamping, Tricia, that will do it. Okay. All right, we got that so far.
I got one more question because it's tuned into the so the whole Corbola connection. it's tuned to the Iropax, right? So the Iropax meditation and session that we do, it allows us to connect in a safe way
Yes.
through a time portal.
Yes, absolutely.
And connect with them in 9001 or 8886.
Well, if that's your designation, what you designate is where you go with it. But it is a safe way to connect. And just for all of you, just briefly, the Corbola is a city in the future, and but it's not quite in the new Earth. It's like right on the cusp. It's here. It's not here. It's not there. It's just right there. And I'm thinking that, and it's not in the Pyramidus radius, so it's like kind of hard to find it. But it's just almost there in the new Earth star that helps people to understand and work with it. But it also holds the treasury that can be ours when we go into the new Earth star. So it gives that to us as we move through that passage. And that's the word that Thoth just gave me now, what to call it. He's calling it the treasury. So it must be some part of our spiritualized being that is awakened through that process to allow us to have a better experience in the new Earth star. But I will put a link to that there. Anyone else before we conclude? Kathleen, were you scratching your nose or you were raising your finger? Okay. Okay, so I think, are we concluded here? All right, everyone. Well, I so appreciate your sticking in there with me on this because, of course, I believe this information is important. Is it really? I don't know, but it feels that way to me, or I wouldn't have spent 50 years working at it. And it feels good to have other people with me that feel the same way. And, the more we're present with creating a timeline experience, a reality experience that embraces the kind of light and energy that this one does, the better it is allowed to manifest into the new Earth experience. That's my take on it. So you're all helping to create that reality. There was one other thing I wanted to mention, but I'm trying to drag it out from my brain that pinged off of this. I'm not going to talk about names and things because this is a video that goes out and I'm not going to, it's just my view, my perspective, or whatever, Thoth's perspective. So I'm not going to do that. But I will say this, that if you're reading some information by a channel or someone who has said they have been actually physically seen this and done this, they could be absolutely correct in the initial experience. But if you're talking about really negative things, of course we've talked about some negative things here, but I'm talking about negative things and, this is bad, and then right now, and we're going, this is, and they're going on and on with this. It's likely that even though they're sincere, either, their fear lens is very focused on it, so it's going to unfocus the light part. But also there's an important thing to consider. There are people who have been Montauked or similar things, and they come back and say, well, I was there, I went through that, and this is what I experienced, and this is what's real. They were probably there, and some of their experience that they're sharing with you was probably real in our reality zone, but they were also being fed alternate realities that are really horrible and fed what they want them to experience up here and see and think they experienced with their whole being. That's not necessarily so. So you have to use your own judgment on that. And if you're listening to someone that's really, really talking on about the whole, that it seems so dense, believe your inner gut, and say, I just don't choose to accept that reality. Maybe some of what they're saying is true, but, if it makes me feel, really bad, just don't accept it. That's my advice. close advice. Okay, that's it. So,
Maya,
Thanks, Maya.
can you close this with a prayer, please?
oh, you want a prayer?
Yes, a closing prayer.
Okay,
Thank you, Mike.
I would love for Bart to do that. He does prayers all the time, and they're really, really beautiful. And I nominate, unless you don't want to. If you don't want to, I don't want to put you on the spot.
That's
But
fine.
okay, let's hear it.
Okay, I want us to connect with our guides, with Thoth, in the very first place, with each other. And from that point of divinity in our hearts, and from the Emstra molecule and all the DNA that we bear from the Mazur Guanche and from the Davidic line of Yeshua and Mary Magdalene, I say thanks to you, Maya, for being this channel that brings us so much wisdom and love and more understanding in this vast world. I thank the divine source, Mazuriel, the Son of all sons, the manifested heart of God, to which we will all return in our own time when we are ready. And we thank our guides, and I thank you all, and you, Maya, for facilitating this. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Bart. That was beautiful.
Oh, that was so nice.
Okay, on that note, I'm going to first turn the video off.